Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Henry. I'm the editor-in-chief for DrBicuspid.com. Thrilled to bring you another episode of the Cellerant CEO podcast series that we're doing in conjunction with our friends at Cellerant Consulting. Dr. Bicuspid is honored to be a part of this, and I'm honored today to be joined by Daniel Weinstein, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lura Health. Daniel, how are you, man?
Honored to be here as well. Really excited for the opportunity to connect with the community. Thanks, Kevin.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed getting to know you before we get on camera here. I've enjoyed our conversation, but I want to know our audience to know a little bit more about you before we dive into kind of what you're doing behind the scenes and how this is all coming about.
Yeah, happy to share. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Lura Health. We're a medical device company that I'll get into, but about my background, um, started the company about 7 years ago now when I was at Tufts University. That's where the founding team is from. So it's myself. The other co-founders are Noah Hill, who's an extremely talented computer scientist and software engineer. And to round out the team, we have Dr. Sam Bozorg, who was at his DMD program at Tufts at the time and is now working part-time at Lura and part-time in private practice. Originally, I'm trained as an engineer. I'm a biomedical engineer by background. I love the inner workings of biology and merging that with medicine, and it's a really exciting time for the biotech industry in general. And it probably helps, doesn't hurt that I grew up in the Boston area. That's really a hub for a lot of this stuff. So
Sure.
now I'm in New York City.
Well, you mentioned the engineering background, the biology love, the Tufts connections, all that. Is that kind of how you got into dentistry and how that you're working on this product that I really think is going to be a game changer for the dental industry?
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I hope so as well. I never thought that I'd go into dentistry. When I grew up, most of my family were dentists. My grandfather was a dentist in the Army. He fought in World War II and then made a practice in Connecticut. Uh, Probably for that reason, two of his sons or my uncles were also dentists. So I remember as a kid walking the floors of Yankee Dental Conference when I was, gosh, probably 4 to 10 years old. And at the time, it was at the Heinz. They had the moon bounces, all of the clowns. It was an interesting environment to grow up in, to say the least. Um, I always had been fascinated by biology, by more medicine. So um, I took that path, and it was really only the use case of this product that pivoted into dental. So we are in the dental field, but we're also taking a new approach from a different angle. And I don't know if I'd call ourselves a dental company. I think of us more as a medical device company, a digital health company that just happens to have a product in the mouth.
So I know we've kind of teased the company, kind of teased the product a little bit, but what is Lura Health and how are you going to impact dentistry?
Yeah, Lura Health is a medical device and health monitoring company. We see ourselves analogous to companies like Dexcom, Medtronic, Abbott, who have transformed health monitoring from single point testing on a one time basis to continuous monitoring, mostly with blood or interstitial fluid or invasive fluids. Um, and they've really brought people's understanding and improvement of health to an entirely new level. I mean, it's the difference of taking a finger prick to track glucose versus having a continuous monitor that can always alert you when you're at risk and provide links to your healthcare provider. We're doing the same thing except for saliva instead of blood.
Okay.
So saliva is a really great diagnostic fluid, as we all know and see. I mean, just look at Colgate's partnership with Pacific for testing some A1C levels with saliva chairside. Look at all of the great genetics companies that are coming out for tracking oral microbiome with saliva. Um, look at traditional drug testing. It's always been saliva and urine. So it's well known, that saliva is a great fluid, but it's stuck where blood testing was when it was still one time, where drool into a tube and send it out to a lab and get a one-time readout. And we really want to bring it into the current century and the current technological era to have the same impact that these other continuous platforms had on blood.
Will, what you're going to be doing with saliva, is it more disease detection? What is the biggest focus that you have and the biggest place that you think that there will be an impact?
I think it's interesting because when we started the company, we knew the potential. We knew the potential for a whole host of conditions that are already either, you know, in research proven to be able to be measured in saliva. So the ADA just put out a great database for salivary biomarkers, and they've identified over 850 health and disease related markers that are in saliva. So the potential is huge. But for us as a company, we didn't want to take the approach of a research lab where we were going to be seeking really high risk markers, whether it's cancer or uh, different allergens or things that are really life or death off the bat, to have a multi-year FDA process and complex sensing development. So we decided that in order to make this viable for us as founders and for our investor team, we were going to start with the low hanging fruit and then build from there. So
Okay.
our first start is in the dental industry. So we're tracking oral health markers, and we're expanding from there to track more of the medical markers. And then we think, 10 years down the road, our biggest segment is probably going to be in the pharmaceutical space. Because if
Okay.
you can track things like medication compliance, therapeutic windows as a companion diagnostic for different drug trials and on the market drugs, you can have a real impact on making sure that patients are staying healthy and getting dosed correctly.
So I want to ask you a little bit about your mindset as an entrepreneur, because I always think that dentists and team members can learn a little bit about business from those who are in business like you. Have you always had this entrepreneur mindset, or is it something that has developed over time?
That's a great question. No, I did not always have this entrepreneurial mindset. When I was growing up, I was convinced that I was going to spend most of my life in a lab somewhere. My first internships were at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, and it changed my life. The work that was going on was so cool, and the fact that, we could be the lab was exploring translational developments that can have immediate impact on patients right down the hall was really inspiring. So I first and foremost thought academia was the best way to make an impact. However, something changed where when I was working with all these PhD students who spent and postdoc students who spend 10 years of their life on a very specific drug interaction or metabolic pathway, published a paper. Um, Sometimes that paper was immediately useful. Sometimes that paper might not be useful for decades until technology catches up with the basic science. So I realized the frustration, or kind of the almost setbacks of publishing, finishing up a great piece of research, and then really being at square one again. After all this, after pouring their life into something that was so specific, they now had to think you know, am I going to work in industry now? Is it going to be something totally different? Am I going to hop to another lab? And I realized that whatever I did, if I was going to be spending that much time and effort on one area of development, I really wanted to be able to see it all the way through. So from that point on, I realized that entrepreneurship was a great way to have ownership of your idea, to build a community around your idea. And, ever since we started, it's just been snowballing, and every day is the idea is growing and the movement is growing. So it's been really cool to see, and it's not no signs of slowing down.
which is a very good thing. That's awesome. We all know that from idea to fruition is a slow, long process. Are you a patient guy, or is this something that patience has kind of been taught to you during this process?
Yeah, this process teaches you endless patience. Uh, however much money you think it's going to take, however long you think it's going to take, it always takes so much more. So, really, as an entrepreneur, it's being aggressive with timelines to make sure that the team is working as hard as possible and you're working as hard as possible to accelerate this development, making sure that momentum continues to build, making sure that progress can compound. You never want to have a culture where it seems like things are just plateauing or staying stale. You always want to be reaching for the next and greatest milestone. However, with that culture of, you know, performance and expectations, there has to be patience and compassion as well, because everybody has worked for an environment that was unrealistic, that was cutthroat. So I think when we think about culture, it's how do you maintain expectations of performance and build and cultivate a high performing team while also showing the team that it's okay if delays happen that are outside of their control. It's okay if, you know, um, something comes back from the factory and it's not quite right and it needs to be reworked for the next version, and that tacks on a couple of months to the timeline, because that's part of development. I mean, I think it, you know, if you look at Edison or any great inventor, they failed. The hallmark of success is to be able to fail as many times as humanly possible, as quickly as possible, so that the one time that you don't fail, that you're good. Um, so I think a lot of it is throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks. But once you have that core, it's building quickly but also sustainably.
I love that, and I love what you said about failure. I think that's fantastic. Is that the maybe the best piece of business advice, or that one business philosophy you have that kind of drives you? And if not, what is it? I'm curious.
Nobody succeeds without failure. But it depends on how you look at failure. So I think everybody will teach you in entrepreneurship that failure in itself is not bad. It can be good, it can be bad, but it's really about how you react to it and why you're failing. If you're failing because you set up an A/B test to look at what the market's going to respond to, or what feature in this product is going to stick, or what, you know, can be one design variant that you introduce into your system, and you know that you're doing it as a test, and you also have other tests going on at the same time. It's just data. Like, you want to fail. You want one thing to fail quickly so that you can course correct and steer to the right direction, and you can kind of imagine the road in front of you and treat it, like a maze. Like, you want to be going, you want to be exploring these different areas, but at the end of the day you keep having to be able to make progress. I think failure can be bad as well when it's something that you could have spent a little bit more foresight on preventing. It's something that has happened again in the past. I mean, a great quote. I think it was Einstein. It might have been someone else, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So that's not a great way to fail. But um, I think of positive failure as more, you know, hypothesis testing, exploration in a systematic way. Um, and that's kind of my thoughts on failure. If I had a philosophy beyond that, um, I guess it's that flexibility is really important, and the ability to learn how to learn new things is really important. So, as a CEO, an early stage CEO, your job changes every 6 months pretty radically. And I think it was Mark Andreessen who said this of Andreessen Horowitz, but sometimes, or maybe it was Sam Altman or somebody, but sometimes the skills that helped you in a certain phase of your growth, 6 months later can be a hindrance. And you have CEOs have a super hard time transitioning for periods of growth, and sometimes they can do it, sometimes they can't and need to be replaced. But I think at the end of the day, it's being open to the fact that there's constant change, that changes a currency, and to be able to continue growing really means to be able to adapt really quickly, to take in a lot of data really fast, and uh, to grow with the challenges at hand.
So I know this is part of the Cellerant CEO podcast series. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what has Cellerant done to kind of help you advance, to kind of help you get ready for this to really become an integral part of the dental industry?
Yeah, Cellerant served as a great feedback loop. Cellerant is extremely connected with everybody in the industry. Cellerant has contacts to get you in the doors of where you need to get to. And these are doors that would be very difficult to open without somebody like Lou and Donovan and the Cellerant team on your side. So, market feedback is really important, but if you're dealing with large dental companies for which it's almost impossible to talk to the C-suite or talk to the management or get time on the decision maker's calendar of a multi-billion-dollar company, it can be really hard as an entrepreneur to pick up signals and to navigate where you need to shape your idea. But we've Celerant has allowed us and enabled us to connect with pretty much everybody who we need to in the dental community to get feedback about how to move this idea forward.
So last question for you: where are we in the product life cycle, and what can dental industry personnel expect to see from Lura Health?
Some exciting things. So, I know the audience is dentists, hygienists, members of the dental entrepreneurial community. I really think that the product has the potential to transform the way people think about their patients' health journeys. Um, you know, Today there's a big push for preventive dentistry. Um, in the 90s, dental got a lot of flack for being drill and fill. And in the 2000s was really the era of preventive care, of Canberra, of data driven EMR systems, really of kind of catching up to the rest of value based care, really catching up to the rest of the thought leadership, or in some cases even paving the way in dental to deliver more personalized and precise care to patients. So, how do we do that? Well, we know that tooth decay is the most common chronic condition in the world. We know that it's also preventable if addressed at the right time. And we also know that it's a factor of lifestyle more than just one particular thing. It's not patients who are really high risk because they have xerostomia or dry mouth. All they need to do is just brush and floss in the morning and night and they'll be fine. It's not, a mouth breather who has sleep apnea and who's suffering erosion from low salivary flow at night, um, needs to take better care of their mouth during the day. That makes no sense. It's not, somebody who, um, you know, has difficulty with access to education around sugary drinks or sodas or nutrition. It's not that they need to be focusing more on, brushing for 10 seconds longer at night. It's a multifaceted condition. And I think right now, everything is spot checks. So when you show up to the dental office, if they're really good about prevention, they might give you a caries risk assessment to figure out subjectively through checklists or talking to you what in your lifestyle is elevating your risk. If they're really preventive, they might give you a salivary buffering test to track the pH of your mouth when you're in the chair and see if you're in a healthy environment at that time. But again, we're getting better with checking at the clinic with all these tools plus AI plus imaging, but there's a gaping hole in managing your patient's health trajectory when they leave the office to when they come back. So our goal at Lura is to fill that gap. Our goal is to provide oral health data and risk assessments on the go at home all the time so the patient knows what in their lifestyle is causing risk of oral decay. And when the patient shows up to the next visit, the dentist will have that full report, no subjectivity. It's all based on the patient's own experience and own data to really drive a more personalized and um, collaborative care journey.
It sounds great. I mean, I've gotten excited the more that I've known kind of prepping for this podcast. But I love where you all are going. And I love just talking to you about what you're seeing because it's very clear there's a vision there. And it's a vision that ends with some very good things for dental patients in the long run.
Thanks. Yeah, it's the vision is what needs to sustain you through all the ups and downs, and it's a big one. I mean, it's a big vision to be able to get a tiny sensor in the mouth embedded into almost any dental product or directly bonded to the tooth and have that record patient health status through saliva and transmit to the phone and sync with an EMR to get better care. It's a big vision, and I think it's one that the dental industry is ready for.
And I'm glad you mentioned the sensor because I've just got to ask you about that real quick because I know that that in and of itself has been a project to get that ready to be a part of this overall product and what you're offering.
Yeah, it's been, like raising a child. The mouth is an extremely difficult place to put safe and effective electronics. You know, especially if it's supposed to be worn all day. We, you can see the introduction of some electronic oral appliances, whether it's, in the CPAP realm or whether it's in concussion detecting mouth guards but getting it to be wearable all the time or for a long-term basis or compatible with people's existing dental products so they don't just take it out and put it back in over and over again, that's really hard. It basically means that you need to have a system and a sensor small enough to be on a single tooth. And the reason that it's small enough, it needs to be small enough to be on a single tooth is because when you start spanning multiple teeth, you deal with customization issues because everybody's mouth is different, which raises an issue for scalable manufacturing. You deal with hygiene issues when you're spanning the interproximal area between two teeth. You deal with overhang into the gum. So our vision was always a sensor that's small enough to be around the size of a bracket that can be integrated either within a device like a denture or an implant, so there's no protrusion, or just slightly, um, you know, contacting the surface of the tooth and still being comfortable and sleek. So to meet that user requirement is a pretty absurd engineering endeavor. I mean, it means when we started the company, the technology that's currently in the device didn't exist yet.
Hmm.
So we either had to invent it. We have, you know, over 5 patent filings, one patent granted, which is all about new components and new assembly methods and ways to create things that needed to be created in order to have this function, or it's about forming great strategic partnerships with the most cutting edge vendors and partners on the planet who are working on, sometimes devices that go into the brain or in the heart to really leverage some of the most sophisticated technology. And, you know, again, having a lot of family members who were dentists when I was growing up, I feel really proud and grateful that I get to be on that, and our team gets to be on that cutting edge of technology and apply that specifically for the dental community. I don't think anybody else is really doing that. So it's a pleasure.
Well, Daniel, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and kind of get in your mindset a little bit today. I really appreciate you sharing, and I want to make sure people know how to learn more about what's coming. Website, however you want people to kind of dive in a little deeper to what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, we'd love to connect with members of the community, whether it's hygienists who are often our biggest fans, whether it's dentists who are looking for more scalable ways of delivering high quality patient care to an ever expanding patient population. Um, I think the best ways to engage with us are to join our community on LinkedIn, to sign up for newsletters, and just to reach out directly. Our website is www.lurahealth.com, Lura health.com, and we're always excited to connect with members of the community.
And we'll absolutely put that link in the show notes so that it's easy access for you all to find. Daniel, thanks so much, man, and wishing you and your company nothing but continued success. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Thrilled to be here, thrilled to be a part of the Cellerant network, and really excited for what's in store together.
And thanks to all of you who've listened to this episode of the Cellerant CEO podcast series powered by DrBicuspid. We'll be back real soon with another episode.